Read the section from the textbook. Feel free to annotate the text to better understand what you are reading. Then stop and answer the questions with your partner as they appear. Lesson 1, The First Americans, Setting the Stage, Our Colonial Heritage. In this unit, you will learn about the first Americans, the American Indian peoples who were here when the first Europeans arrived. You will also learn about the Europeans who colonized North America. The British colonies settled along the Atlantic coast would become the first 13 states in the nation. Political divisions like colonies and states did not exist before the Europeans arrived. Each American Indian group occupied a territory that had no formal boundaries. As the map on the opposite page shows, the continent's physical geography varies greatly. American Indians lived in harmony with the land. Their different environments gave them different ways of life. Contact with European colonists changed those ways of life. The map below shows where European nations claimed land in North America. To satisfy French demand for furs, American Indians in regions claimed by France began to hunt more. The Spanish tried to enslave Indians and, along with the English, wanted their land. Increased hunting, flight from slavery, and loss of land pushed some Indian groups into territory occupied by other Indians. As the British colonies became a nation, and as that nation grew, this population shift continued. Eventually, almost no Indian lands remained. However, the names of many places in North America are reminders of those lands. The Ohio, Mississippi, and Missouri rivers get their names from American Indian words, as do about half the states. As a cold winter wind howls outside, the children huddle under thick fur blankets. They listen to their grandmother's soothing voice. In the beginning there was the Great Spirit, grandmother begins, who ruled over a world of sky and water. Then the Great Spirit, says grandmother, created land, plants, and animals. Finally, from living wood, the Great Spirit carved people for the new world. These Abenaki children of New England are learning how their people began. Most groups have beliefs about where they came from. You may have heard stories about how your own relatives first arrived in the United States. But do you know where your ancestors were living 10,000 years ago? Only if you are American Indian did you have relatives in the United States that long ago. Europeans and other groups did not start arriving in North America until a little more than 500 years ago. For thousands of years, the first Americans had the American continents to themselves. In this chapter, you will learn about these resourceful people and the creative ways they adapted to their environments. Even today, scientists are still trying to find out more about the first Americans. These early people left few written records, so researchers study other items they left behind. Not much has survived except for a few animal and human bones, some stone and metal tools, and bits of pottery. Like detectives, scientists sift through these clues, trying to imagine how these people lived and how their lives changed over time. They come up with ideas about the many ways in which American Indians adapted to their physical surroundings. When scientists find a new object, they try to figure out whether it supports their current ideas or suggests new ones. In your lifetime, we will probably learn much more about how the first Americans adapted to their environments and may revise many of our conclusions. Section 2, Migration Routes of the First Americans. Scientists believe that the first Americans migrated on foot from Siberia in Asia to present-day Alaska. Today, a strip of ocean called the Bering Strait separates Alaska and Asia, but there was a time when a land bridge connected them. Across a land bridge. About 30,000 years ago, the most recent ice age began. As temperatures fell, much of the earth was covered by glaciers, sheets of ice up to a mile thick. With water locked up in the glaciers, the level of the oceans dropped 200 feet. This exposed a wide bridge of land between Asia and North America that scientists call Beringia. In the summer, Beringia's grasslands attracted large Asian mammals such as mammoths, which are long-haired cousins of the elephant. Over thousands of years, the animals slowly spread eastward. Generations of Siberian hunter families followed. Armed with only stone-tipped spears, they killed these huge, powerful animals for food. Eventually, perhaps between 10,000 and 20,000 years ago, some of the hunters reached America. Other migrants may have traveled along the coast of Beringia by boat to catch fish, seals, and other marine mammals. Migrating east and south. Once in America, hunters followed the animals south, where spring brought fresh grasses. Then, about 10,000 years ago, Earth warmed again. As the glaciers melted and the oceans rose, the land bridge disappeared. Mammoths and other traditional prey began to die off, perhaps from disease, overhunting, or the changing climate. The descendants of Siberian hunters then had to find new sources of food and new materials for clothing and shelter. So these people, now known to us as American Indians, became hunter-gatherers, catching smaller animals, fishing more, and collecting edible plants and seeds. Over thousands of years, they spread across the two American continents, from the Pacific to the Atlantic, and from Alaska all the way to the tip of South America. 1. Define the term Beringia in your own words. 2. Draw a simple illustration to represent the term Beringia. 3. Where did the first Americans come from? Where did they migrate? Section 3. The first Americans adapt to the environment. American Indians lived in a variety of places, from snowy forests to dry deserts and vast grasslands. Each of these kinds of places is an environment. An environment includes everything that surrounds us: land, water, animals, and plants. Each environment also has a climate or long-term weather pattern. Groups of American Indians survived by adapting or changing their style of living to suit each environment, its climate, and its natural resources. Using natural resources. American Indians learned to use the natural resources in their environments for food, clothing, and shelter. In the frigid regions of the far north, early Americans survived by hunting caribou in the summer and sea mammals in the winter. They fashioned warm, hooded clothing from animal skins. To avoid being blinded by the glare of the sun shining on snow, they made goggles out of bone with slits to see through. The people of the North lived most of the year in houses made from driftwood and animal skins. In winter, hunters built temporary shelters called igloos out of blocks of snow. In warmer climates, American Indians gathered wild plants. Then, about 7,000 years ago, they learned to raise crops such as squash, chili peppers, beans, and corn. Growing their own food enabled them to settle in one place instead of following animals or searching for edible plants in the wild. These early farmers built the first villages and towns in America. American Indian cultural regions. Over generations, groups of American Indians developed their own cultures or ways of life. Many became part of larger groupings that were loosely organized under common leaders. Groups living in the same type of environment often adapted in similar ways. Forest dwellers often lived in houses covered with tree bark, while many desert peoples made shelters out of branches covered with brush. Using such artifacts, items made by people, historians have grouped American Indian peoples into cultural regions. A cultural region is made up of people who share a similar language and way of life. By the 1400s, between 1 and 2 million American Indians lived in 10 major cultural regions north of Mexico. Later in this chapter, you will take a closer look at 8 of these regions. They include the Northwest Coast, California, the Great Basin, the Plateau, the Southwest, the Great Plains, the Eastern Woodlands, and the Southeast. 1. Give 2 examples of how American Indians used natural resources to adapt to their environments. 2. In your own words, describe what the term culture means. 3. Use the maps in this section to answer these questions. Feel free to zoom in or enlarge the images. A. Which American Indian cultural region do you live in? B. What type of clothing would most American Indians living on the plains wear? C. What type of housing would most American Indians living in the Southeast build? D. What type of food would most American Indians living in the Great Basin eat? Section 4. How American Indians viewed their environment. Wherever they lived, American Indians had a strong connection to their surroundings. They lived, American Indians had a strong connection to their surroundings. They viewed themselves as part of the community of plants, animals, and other natural objects. As a Sioux said, "From Wakantanka, the Great Spirit, there came a great unifying life force that flowed in and through all things. The flowers of the plains, blowing winds, rocks, trees, birds, animals, and was the same force that had been breathed into the first man. Nature's spirits. American Indians generally believed that each part of nature had its own spirit. Each person had to maintain a balance with these spirits. These beliefs were expressed in various customs. Southwest farmers, for example, made corn a part of every ceremony. Hunters gave thanks to the animals they killed. Using the land. Unlike Europeans, American Indians did not believe that land could be owned as private property. But each group was deeply connected to its homeland, the area where its people lived most of the year. If necessary, American Indians would fight to protect their right to this land. American Indians modified the land to suit their needs. Woodland people set fires to clear heavy forest growth so deer could browse and berries could grow. Southwest farmers built ditches to carry water to dry fields. These practices seldom harmed the environment. As one American Indian historian explains, "We dug our clams here, caught our salmon over there, got seagull eggs on another island. By the time we came back here, this place had replenished itself." American Indians tried not to waste anything taken from nature. A Californian woman recalled, "When we kill meat, we eat it all up. When we dig roots, we make little holes. We shake down acorns and pine nuts. We don't chop down the trees." Read this Sioux quotation. "From the Wakantanka, the Great Spirit, there came a great unifying life force that flowed in and through all things. The flowers of the plains, blowing winds, rocks, trees, birds, animals." What does the quotation reveal about how American Indians viewed the environment?